Hi, and welcome to our module on in-class course corrections, and we're going to use the scenario provided and then also kind of integrate it with what's going on in my classroom and the instructional design that I created for this module. So we know the generic scenario. Basically, you have a couple students that are not participating, and when they are, they're still not hitting the results that we're looking for. So what I did is I tied it into what I'm doing currently in class, and also tied it into the design that we created in these previous modules. So here's the specifics scenario. The course at play here is a 6th grade social studies class. It's a world region studies class, and we're currently studying Canada. The learning activities in the design are all based on a menu style approach, which I'll talk about on the next slide. The way that the week ends is there's a snapshot assessment. And basically at that point we're able to look at all the things and see if a student is able to master or not. The scenario now is saying that there's a few students in each of my classes that are not mastering, and we're trying to figure out why. So to better understand the corrections, I think you need to understand the actual design. So here's the design. To the right here is an actual picture of the menu. So basically the students come in the beginning of the week. There's a flipped classroom element where they're responsible for going home and watching a video module that I've put together on the content, which in this case is the history of Canada. So they go home, watch that, and they have to take notes on a note catcher. Once they complete that, they're able to select learning activities through the menu that they would like to complete during the week. As you can see, there's quite a bit of variety on this list. The end of the week is capped off with an assessment, and at that point we would have all the data we could possibly need. We end the whole module with a teacher-student conference where we review all the data that we have with the students and give them an overall competency. So data collection here, this works out really easy for data collection. We'll collect all of the learning activities, we'll collect the note catchers, and Google Forms will do, with Flubaroo, will do all the collection of data for the assessments and actually do a test item analysis for us. Very easy to do. The other data we're collecting that's not typically part of the actual module or the unit of study, but something that our school does, is habits of scholarship. And at the end of each week we must rate the students in the 4 areas that we consider scholarship in our school. 4 being an outstanding performance, 1 being they're not meeting the expectation. And the 4 habits of scholarship are appropriate behavior, time on task, active participation, and homework completion. And the reason I'm listing this now is because I think those are going to play a big role when we start looking at the data. So now we've gained all of our data. We've got students have handed everything in. Now we're going through it, we're processing it, and we're analyzing it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze all the assessment data on Google Forms through Flubaroo. It's going to give us a breakdown of every student's grade, and then actually break down how every student in the 6th grade scored on a particular test. We can make that decision if there's possible questions that needed to be removed or the grade adjusted based on test item analysis. Obviously Google Forms does all that for us. We're then going to take a look at the menu data, and what I'm really going to look at is, did the students master the menu data? And after grading it, I'll have a spreadsheet that will show me overall mastery in the 6th grade. Did they master it or not? And then what we're going to do is, once we really have the menu data and we have the assessment data, what I'm going to do is look at students that did not perform well, and both of those things combined first. And then what I'm going to do is cross-reference all the students that struggled in the assessment and menu portion of the unit, and we're going to cross-reference it with the habits of scholarship. And this is going to do a lot of work for us here, because what we're going to be able to tell right away is, was the problem based on the students' behaviors, their lack of participation, their lack of engagement, their lack of completion of work. So what we're able to do right away is make that cross-reference. And that makes our life a lot easier. So after doing all of that, and this is what we do with each menu approach, it was really easy to see about 80% of the students mastered or were really close to mastering overall. So they weren't even put through the data analysis. I will still meet with them, but those aren't the outlying students. So basically it comes down to 2 to 3 students per class that were not mastering or close to mastery, and those were the students that we went through and we looked and we cross-referenced all those things. At this point, now we have to make an informed decision on what we want to do with those students. So I analyzed all the data, cross-reference it with the Habits of Scholarship, and we're going to then conference with the students. The first type of student we're going to conference with is the student that's not mastering, and it may particularly be because of their Habits of Scholarship. So our conversation is going to be mostly about their Habits of Scholarship. Maybe they're not putting enough time on task. Maybe they're not completing the homework or portions of the class that need to be completed at home. Maybe their behavior is hindering their progress. So we're going to talk more in that sense, because unless we have proper Habits of Scholarship, I can't really look at the course design as the problem. In some cases, we're able to give students additional time. We have in our schedule built in an individualized block for 20 days. We might be able to get that student and just focus on a Habit of Scholarship, or in this case we could redo this entire menu with them and see with proper Habits of Scholarship does their mastery improve. So that's the first group of students. Now the second group of students are those 2 to 3 students in my classes that are struggling, yet their Habits of Scholarship are good. So they're putting in a good effort, they have a good behavior, their time on task. So now we need to dig a little deeper. Is it a course design problem? And so that's what the conference we're going to lead with. And so we're going to talk to the students, get their feedback, and we're going to look at a few different things. We're going to look at their learning style, which we know, and we're going to look at other data and make a decision if maybe some of the activities on the menu might need to be adjusted for these students. Yes, is this really individualizing the learning for each student? Absolutely. But at this point, we're talking a very small group of students that would need this type of individualizing it for them. So we'll make those adjustments, and then we'll set up another conference a week later. Now we've done these menus a few times, and there's actually been a few times where that 2 or 3 number was more at 10 to 12, and what that told us is there was something wrong with the course design. So we would approach that differently. Instead of conferencing with each student, we would look at it as teachers and say, well, what needs to change in the course since a majority of the students didn't get it. In this case, it's a small group, so we had our 2 different types of meetings, and we would hope, checking back in a week later, that we would see results. So that's kind of how we would go through that scenario with the menu approach. Like I said, that's for a small group. If there was a larger group, we would do it a little bit differently. I think gathering enough data, 2 to 3 pieces of data, makes it really clear. And what makes our job, I think, now that we have this system in place, a lot easier as educators. The Habits of Scholarship really are an important piece of data for us. Something that we may take for granted earlier. Now it's data that we track, that we know, and we could actually use that data to say this is why a student is not mastering, or this is why a student's not getting it or performing below average as the basic scenario presents. Thanks for listening.